What if I told you the current global energy market creates national and global vulnerabilities, funds human rights violations, and lacks the necessary commitment of innovating towards clean, reliable energy sources? An energy focused future burdened by uncertainty will serve as a catalyst for launching invasions, funding wars, and even more global turmoil in the name of energy. I believe Canada can drastically improve its quality of life for Canadians and the people all over the globe by acknowledging its potential to become the energy leader of the world. If Canada can overcome its setbacks, we have the potential to stabilize the global demand through our abundance of clean, reliable energy while addressing the following crucial needs: independence and energy security, consideration for ethics, and a commitment to innovation. Across all the diverse categories, Canada is perhaps the richest country in natural resources, boasting unimaginable wealth. We are one country with just 40 million people, yet we have the longest coastline in the world, millions of lakes containing 20% of all the world's fresh water, the second most trees in the world, third largest oil reserves, as well as abundances in natural gas, minerals, and quite frankly, any other natural resource you can think of. Canada has long been living in the shadow of its potential, and both the nation and the world cannot afford to live this way any longer. This project made me reflect on the fortunate experience I have had to work part time for my Member of Parliament, John Broussard. This ongoing opportunity has allowed me to hear the concerns of people in my community as well as the perspective of someone directly involved in the government. Such experiences, coupled with my own personal research, has led me to the conclusion that we are limiting our nation's potential to improve the lives of people all around the world in two main ways. The first is the carbon tax and the associated rebate system, and the second is the Alberta land lock. Although the carbon tax was created with pure intentions of limiting the CO2 output and protecting our environment, in practice it has become a tax placed on the backbone of any strong nation, the middle class. Although there are claims that the carbon rebate leaves families with more money than they paid in tax, this just isn't true. In fact, the government's own parliamentary budget officer released a statement saying families were actually worse off. The additional cost can be closely estimated, however, the indirect costs are far too inconsistent and vast to accurately measure, especially nationwide. Let me introduce you to a negative feedback loop that I have created to consolidate my findings. For example, a tax on gas increases the cost on farmers growing our food. This also increases the cost of transporting the food from farms to refineries and then to the grocery store, as well as the actual refining process itself. With every step of the process becoming more expensive, the end result is that you pay more for your groceries. My solution to this unfortunate cycle would be to create a positive feedback loop by eliminating the tax. Without the tax on the consumer, gas prices would be lower, farming, manufacturing, transporting, and refining goods will be more affordable, and we know that the price is equal to the cost of goods. We can further strengthen Canada's energy sector by addressing Alberta's landlocked status. I believe the cost of building these pipelines to allow Alberta's oil to be utilized across Canada is actually far more affordable than people realize. I'd even go as far to say that the cost of not building these pipelines is even greater. But more on this later. Let's start off by saying Canada needs oil. Now we can turn to Saudi Arabia and give them some money, and in exchange, we get the oil we need. However, these Canadian dollars being given to Saudi Arabia will never make it back into the country. This money is gone forever. Instead, what we can do is we can invest this money into our own people and keep it circulating in Canada, leading to what I nicknamed as the doubling effect. This investment goes into creating jobs for workers building the pipeline, maintaining the pipeline, the logistics behind the pipeline, and a whole plethora network of jobs created through the runoff of this initial investment. Furthermore, every time Canadians spend this money on groceries, entertainment, or whatever else, the government collects a 13% tax, or 15% if you're outside of Ontario. Therefore, keeping the money in Canada will also provide consistent tax revenue, allowing for more dollars to be invested back into the country. A true win-win scenario, hence the name, the doubling effect. In other words, Canada gets oil and the economy gets stimulated, helping to feed families, create jobs, and maintain a steady tax revenue. In participating in a county-wide unique school opportunity known as the Global Perspectives Program, I was challenged to outline the dangers of dependency on the world stage and saw a real-life example during the program's exchange to Germany. While touring an iron factory in the Saarland, the tour guide provided great insight into the industrial sector of Germany. She informed me that Germany had learned a hard and valuable lesson: the cost of being dependent on a foreign nation, especially one who does not align themselves politically, morally, or through common values. When Russia shut off its natural gas supply to Germany, the nation instantly lost 55% of its total natural gas supply. The country even had to resort to abandoning its climate change goals in the name of energy independence by reopening coal plants to compensate for the sudden change. The net result was a mini recession, with the country seeing a 0.5% hit to its GDP, equating to over $20 billion. Even then, this was the best case scenario, as many nations don't have old yet functional energy plants to fall back on in such event. The solution is for nations to achieve independence and energy security. Here's how they can do that: diversify your source of imports through various countries to limit the control that one country holds over your nation. That way, if one source disappears, the nation can turn to its other providers. Secondly, unlike Germany in this example, sourcing energy from allies who share morals, values, ideologies, and are politically and economically aligned will significantly reduce the risk of foul play in the energy market. This is where Canada can step up. Not only does Canada have a strong relationship with NATO and EU members, but also with countries all around the world thanks to its vast peacekeeping and humanitarian efforts. What you're about to see is a visual representation of the countries that rely on Saudi Arabian oil exports to varying degrees. Now let's talk about the ethical concerns that make this dependency even more dangerous. Saudi Arabia and other key oil exporters in the Middle East, such as Iraq, Iran, Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, target specific groups like women, LGBTQ+ members, and migrant workers. Saudi Arabia enforces this system by tightly regulating media and press, freedom of speech, imposing harsh sentences and capital punishment. The nation also heavily limits travel and does not issue passports to such groups, making it hard to flee from these rulings. Canada was one of the first nations to grant women the right to vote, to legalize same-sex marriage, and was the original signatories of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Standing up for these issues domestically yet funding them internationally is hypocritical. By utilizing and buying Canadian oil and energy, nations can meet their oil demands without the concern that these transactions are funding, supporting, and encouraging regimes notorious for human rights violations. Here are the top 5 producers of renewable electricity and their corresponding percentages of the global output. These are the corresponding populations of each of these countries. Among this list, there's an outlier: Canada. Canada's population makes up just 1.87% of this group's size, but yet they account for 9.37% of the group's total output. Canada is already punching well above its weight class, but given Canada's abundance of natural resources, it has the potential to expand on this production even more. Another advantage to Canadian energy is our desire and ability to innovate towards cleaner, sustainable, and more renewable energy. In the near future, if CO2 emissions prove to be inextricably linked to global warming through scientific consensus, innovation is one way Canada can hedge or protect its bet into ramping up energy production. Bringing this video to an end, if there's anything I want you to remember, it's that a country's quality access to energy is a direct reflection of the well-being of its people. Both people inside and outside of Canada need a quality energy provider. We can be that provider, we can be that nation, and we can be that leader. We just need to step up.